Fuck the coronavirus.
Oh, yeah. Guess who's back?
Welcome back to the channel. Today it is a COVID-19 coronavirus alert. Of course, the big story came out. Ezekiel Elliott and a number of Dallas Cowboys players and Houston Texans players have contracted the coronavirus, or COVID-19 as it is known. But before we get into the story, please subscribe to the channel. Hit the subscribe button right here in this area. Like the video. Leave a comment with all your thoughts about this whole thing, because we're going to kind of get into it right now. So, of course, the story came out initially. Ian Rappaport reported yesterday that several Cowboys and Texans players have, been tested positive for having the coronavirus. And then I believe shortly after, within the hour or two, he announced or reported that Ezekiel Elliott was one of the players that has tested positive. And of course, Zeke's a big name, one of the biggest names in the NFL, so it got a lot of traction, and people started doing digging and freaking out. And this is a serious thing. I think here recently people have, taken their foot off the gas as far as the level of thought and importance they put into it. I believe it is serious, and that's why every league is taking a lot of precautions and trying to figure out the right way to come back. But I think the first thing that I wanted to point out is that I think that it's an inevitability that some of these players are going to get it. You're going to know someone who has it at a certain point, I feel like. And there's a lot of players in the NFL, somebody's going to get it. You could be as safe as possible and you could still contract. Just one random person coughs in the vicinity of you, or you just happen to touch a surface that was very soon before you touched it was coughed on or something like that, because we know now that possibly that the coronavirus does not last on surfaces very long. But still, if you're in public transportation, which is why I think is a big deal of why New York was getting hit by a large amount. Now, of course, we're not doctors. We're just here to talk about the facts of the matter. So I think the biggest question that we've been asking ourselves is there going to be a season? What's going to happen? So
I think they're going to kind of have to do like baptism by fire. Like, sure, they're going to have things in place, but whoever their PR guys are, their medical staff across all NFL teams, throughout the guys at the head of the NFL, it's going to be a very busy season as far as just access goes and statements and just everything. I think they're just going to have to really you have to account for any type of situation that can occur, and you can't do that.
So one thing I wanted to point out is that the NFL released some reopening protocols to teams recently, and John Harbaugh, the head coach of the Baltimore Ravens, the Ravens as an organization are usually they're at the tip of the spear, they're trendsetters, and he said that the reopening protocols that the NFL sent each team are humanly impossible. That of course that they're going to practice social distancing and masks, but he boiled it down to, in a huddle, is our players going to be within 6 feet apart? Or if you're working out and this and that, are players going to shower one at a time? There's going to be a lot of different things that everyone has to think about. And we just look at the other sports leagues. The NBA right now, they have the best model so far, it seems, to get play started. But it's going to take a lot of sacrifice from the NBA players. They're going to be basically on lockdown in quarantine for the entirety of whatever it is the time they play in Florida at the Disneyland or Disney World at the center there. So I don't know.
If I had to find the best case scenario, which would kind of suck for the players, but I think it'd be the best route to go. Obviously, you have your family, and then you have you have you and your teammates. Mm-hmm. Those are the only people you should be around ever. You can't travel. You can't go anywhere else. You can't do anything else. And you're either at the facility, training, at the games, with your family. If your family goes anywhere, or try to do stuff like remotely, or order stuff. Like, obviously, you have to go grocery shopping and stuff. But I would say that as players, and the only people you can be around are your team and your family, and that's it.
And that's why I say it's going to take sacrifice, because that's what it seems like the NBA is going to do. I'm not even sure if they're going to have access to family members for a certain period of time. But another interesting part of this whole thing and how leagues are figuring it out is, of course, college football programs have reported back to campus. One of the bigger stories that came out was Ohio State University having their players sign a coronavirus. They're calling it the Buckeye Pledge, but if you really look deep into it, it's more of a waiver, because it's more of a pledge. I'm pledging to the Ohio State University staff, to my coaches, and to my teammates that I will follow all social distancing guidelines. I will wear a face covering whenever I go out. I am pledging myself to do as much as possible to stay safe. But at the same time, you're also acknowledging in this waiver that even if you are as safe as possible, you're still have the ability to contract the coronavirus while participating in team activities. So yes, they're wording it one way as this pledge to stay safe, but at the same time, if you were ever to get into a legal matter, they're going to have this document of a player acknowledging that I can contract the coronavirus at any time, at any given time.
And we told you this.
Yeah, basically. And I acknowledge that. So, and parents are signing it too. Obviously, some of these players are still minors in certain states. So, freshmen coming in. So that's another interesting part of the whole thing, because it's not just the NFL, it's everybody. There was also a report today that if there's no fans in the stands for the NFL, they're already projecting to lose about $3 billion this year. So, like I've said in previous videos, I've already accepted the fact that I'm not going to be able to attend any games.
Yeah, we're not going to any games here.
I don't think it's going to happen. If you do go to the games, it'll be at probably a limited capacity, so ticket prices are going to be more expensive, which is fine for some. Me personally, I don't see any difference. And I mean, I do enjoy going to the games. I've been going to about 2 games each season for the past 3 years. I enjoy it, but I can stay home and watch the games. I just care if they're televised. And number 2 is that if you're attending a game, you're going to you may have to sign some sort of waiver, acknowledging,
or when you buy the ticket or something.
Yeah, waiving liability or acknowledging the fact that you can contract coronavirus at a game, which of course, I mean, that's a situation where I wouldn't want to be in. And my whole perspective on this whole thing has always been our age group right now. We are contracting it at a high rate, one of the highest, but we are also recovering. The thing is, that's fine, that's all well and dandy if I recover, but I have the opportunity to pass that along to someone else who's more vulnerable, and that's always been my thought. I don't want to be responsible for giving it to someone else, a family member, a friend that is has an autoimmune deficiency or is red flag medicals or older, and then, I mean, that's the worst possible situation you could be in. So, the Zeke story, the players getting it, I think that was just inevitable, but I think the bigger story here is the NFL realizing and planning and looking further into it. What are we going to have to do to get this done? The draft was one thing. Nobody really had to come into contact, but once you're on facilities and things, there's going to be so many moving parts. I mean, I was just thinking, you lose a player like the Eagles, we were just talking, they lose Brandon Brooks to an Achilles injury. You could lose a player to COVID, like to coronavirus, or at the very least, you lose a player for 2 weeks at a time. And they're not technically injured, but they are compromised, and they can affect a lot more people.
And like with Zeke, he said he doesn't have any symptoms or anything. Like he could have easily been just playing out there. And his test, according to the report, was just as a precaution. He didn't necessarily have to be tested. So let's just say training camp started in a month and he was still asymptomatic, or the timetable changed. Of course, timetables are going to have to change. He's not tested, and just on the first glance, of course, players would have to be tested as soon as they get onto the steps of the facility. Any new facility, once you touch down. Yeah.
So this is just the tip of the iceberg. I think once we get into training camp, because it seems like training camp's going to go down. They have protocols in place for that. As soon as training camp starts and testing starting with players coming into the facilities, expect to see a lot of other big names popping up and are going to have to go into 2-week quarantines before stepping onto facilities. This is just the start of that. Once they get towards closer to the season, traveling is going to be the next big thing. Traveling from city to city and planning games. But I mean, this is just the reality of where we live.
Unless people in charge really just don't care or anything, I don't see why why there's a good reason to have fans. Like, it's just going to be it should just be just an empty stadium.
Other than money, I think that, I mean, we've been talking about no fans in the stadium for, 2-3 months already, going all the way back to whenever Kirk Cousins first made his comments. I think every NFL player's already thought about and kind of gone through the scenario of having no fans in the stands, and I think that at the end of the day, is it really going to affect their play? No, they're professionals. They're going out there to do their job, so I don't think it's going to really affect them. The only thing is money, of course. You want to get the money, but the biggest part of that is broadcasting. You're going to have to broadcast the games, and we'll see what happens. But we'll see what happens with Zeke. Of course, he's going to be in quarantine for the next 2 weeks at least. Of course, he'll be tested continuously, and we'll see what more comes out in the coming weeks as we get closer to July. And of course, July 15th, the big date, whenever the Cowboys will or will not sign Dak Prescott too. I mean, I'm glad that this little story about Zeke's name is covering up that story, because
because we just hit a month. Yeah, we just hit a month deadline
yesterday of whenever they can sign Dak to his deal or decide not to. But we will see what happens. We appreciate you being with us for this short video on the Zeke story and the COVID-19 story. Please like the video, leave a comment with your thoughts. It helps us reach more people whenever you like and comment the video. So if you're watching, that would be doing us a big favor. And then, of course, if you're new to the channel, if you like NFL content, if you like Dallas Cowboys content, please hit the subscribe button. We appreciate you watching. We will see you next time.
Yo, I ain't here for the money, I ain't here for the fame. Though it might be nice to own a jet plane, I'ma do it all for you.